Welcome everyone. Haribol, Hare Krishna. My name is Sarge, and this is episode 4 of Wisdom Talks with Think Gita, where we delve in every week into a different topic which explores how we can combine the ancient Vedic wisdom of the Bhagavad Gita to spiritual topics and environmental topics. So we're really lucky today because we have a very special guest with us whose name is Sheila Chauhan. And this week's episode is all about how a spiritual outlook can be invoked by having environmental consciousness. So how does a spiritual outlook match with having an environmental consciousness, and where's the synergy, and how does the Bhagavad Gita tie into all of that? So we're going to be delving into how a profound connection and having a spiritual perspective can really help us to develop our environmental consciousness. And we've got Sheila here, who's an environmental consultant, who's going to help us along on that journey. But before we start, I'm going to do a little invocation, a little prayer, which is going to set the tone and spiritually enthuse us as we get started on this journey. So you can close your eyes if you'd like to listen, or you can fold your palms together, or you can quietly listen and open your heart to the sounds of the mantra. Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnana Shalakaya Chakshurum Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Tadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Gurun Shri Yuta Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakanvitamscha Namo Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Saraswati Namine Nirvishesha Shunyavani Prasyachani Dashitarine Namo Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Nitinamine Shri Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shrivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Okay, so now we're going to be really fortunate to meet Sheila, who's an environmental consultant. We're going to hear her inspiring journey of how the Bhagavad Gita's ecological principles have ignited her passion to protect our natural world. And through the lens of karma, we're going to learn how Sheila empowers South Asian communities to take action on climate change, and how she conducts thought-provoking workshops, and she spearheads a really amazing initiative called Karma to Climate Change, which is an interactive exhibition that's been recognized by UNESCO for its global impact. And we're also going to explore the spiritual roots of environmental responsibility and learn a bit more about Sheila's remarkable journey to inspire change on a global scale. So if you have any questions while Sheila's speaking, you can hold on to them, and we'll have a chance to ask Sheila some of those questions at the end. So I'll let Sheila take the floor. Sheila, thank you so much.
Hare Krishna, everybody. Thank you, Sarge, for that introduction. So yes, my name is Sheila Chauhan, and I am an environmentalist, and I specialize in campaigns and policy. So thank you very much to the Think Gita team for the invitation to speak this evening. I really appreciate it, and I appreciate everybody else that is online today as well. Before I begin, I would like to begin with a little bit of slowing down, a little bit of meditation. I'm sure we've all had busy days today. So if you can just humor me and just come with me on this little journey, I'd like you to, all of you right now, close your eyes. Obviously, don't do this if you're handling heavy machinery or if you're driving, but otherwise, I would like you to close your eyes, everybody. I can see if you're opening your eyes, if you left them open, but please do close them. And I'd like for you to forget where you were rushing from. You are here now. So take a deep breath in and a deep breath out. You are feeling relaxed. Now take another breath in. And now this time bring your shoulders up to your ears. And as you breathe out, let your shoulders fall. You are now totally relaxed. Keeping your eyes shut, I'd like you to think of a time when you were in nature and you were happy, where you felt connected, you felt peaceful. This could be a beach, a park, or even mountaintop. The air was fresh and you had a smile on your face. This is the beauty of life, and it should be kept this way. This is your happy place. This happy place of yours should not be spoiled, and it should remain beautiful for you to go back to and for you to experience it again and again. Maybe you'll go again and you'll share it with your friends and family. But for now, you can take solace that this is your place and this is your happy place where you feel connected to the natural elements. Now slowly open your eyes. And if you have a pen and paper handy, write down your happy place because we're going to come back to this later. So this talk is titled, How does a spiritual outlook guide environmental consciousness? Now, before I begin this, I feel it's very important for me to give a personal account of mine, because to change any part of a consciousness, there is a journey attached to that. So let me share my journey. So I've always had a protective nature. I like to stand up to injustices. As I was growing up, I stood up to injustices in the playground, in protecting my friends from bullies. Being an older sister, again, I've got a very protective nature with my siblings as well, from any hardships. And eventually, this kind of protective nature eventually just grew to protecting the earth. As I was growing up, I felt like she was taken for granted and that the relationship can at times be one-sided, where we are the ones that are taking and exploiting and spoiling everything that she gives to us. And I recall that as a child, I remember seeing on the news that there was a hole in the ozone layer. I don't know if you remember this, anybody, but there was a great big news alert, hole in the ozone layer, and it's all due to these CFC gases that were actually found in aerosols. And it was literally just causing a hole up in the atmosphere. And I realized then at that point, like how fragile the earth actually is. And the cause of like human impact, like we made that hole. So I realized the fragility of the earth and the impact as humans that we could make that could be quite detrimental if we didn't check ourselves. So I thought to myself, who's looking after the earth? So this led for me to go on to study my bachelor degree in environmental sciences, and then after that a master's in environmental law and practice. And I wanted to understand if national and international law was indeed protecting the earth, or if it was just paying lip service, and if protection comes second to economic development. So currently I work for a multinational company, and we're specializing in environmental campaigns and policy. I also try to support my local temple to implement green practices, and this is something that I've just recently tried to start, and hopefully along that way I can look after and improve ISKCON temples in the UK as well. So this was my moment in my life where my environmental work. So there was a moment, sorry, in my environmental kind of career, I guess, where I decided that at this point, how could I move beyond the 9 to 5? So there's a moment in life where the environment work that I did became more than a 9 to 5. It became a calling, it became a purpose. And this actually came from a very emotional response. So can I share my manifestation moment, which catapulted me into activism? After university, I carried out an environmental project in Kerala in South India, and I actually lived in a very austere place. It was an elephant grass roof hut that I was living in, and I would open up my door, and I would see this beautiful Western Ghat mountains spanning across a horizon. The mountains were beautiful, and I would think that I want to conquer it. I want to conquer it by climbing it. So my first attempt, I climbed halfway up the Western Ghat Mountains, and I was told by local people living on the mountain to go no further as bears were spotted an hour ago, and it's dangerous to continue. Disappointed, I climbed back down the mountain. But I'm not a defeatist. So a week later, I started my second attempt to climb the mountain. But on the path this time, I spotted snakes in the undergrowth. So I had to abandon the trek again. Disappointed, I climbed back down. A week after that, I tried again. It was my third attempt and I took a different route. And guess what? No bears, no snakes. I made it to the top. Now, rather than feeling proud, I felt humbled. Rather than feeling like a conqueror, I felt conquered. Rather than feeling like a champion, instead, I felt really small on this majestic mountain that was millions of years old, that held the wisdom of life in every crevice of its rock face. And I thought, embarrassingly, who am I to conquer this mountain? I am insignificant in comparison to the mountain. My body is home to one person, and that's me. But the mountain is home to countless number of species. And he stands there being cooled by the breeze or warmed by the sun. Nature changes the mountain. However, this mountain changed my nature. This mountain led me to fall on my knees, and I felt like I was at the mercy of this mountain. And I felt that the mountain and the natural world needed our protection. So on that day onwards, I checked my narrative in how I describe the natural world. Rather than conquering something, I became in awe of it. So my happy place, when I asked you to close your eyes, my happy place is the Western Ghat Mountain. And it was the beginning of me connecting the dots between spirituality and environmental consciousness. So I'd like to now introduce 3 fundamental Vedic concepts which play a crucial role in my environmental consciousness and activism. And firstly, that's ahimsa, which means non-violence, dharma, which means duty, karma is a cycle of action and reaction. So my faith-led activism really lies deeply rooted in the need to exercise non-violence, ahimsa, in my everyday activities or everyday actions, which is karma, towards the natural world as an act of my duty, which is my dharma. So in the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 7, verse 8, Lord Krishna actually says that I am the original fragrance of the earth. I am the taste of water. I am the heat in fire. I am the life of all that lives. So we understand that the earth and the natural elements is the energy of God, Sri Krishna, and it is therefore deemed sacred and worthy of our love, respect, reverence, and protection. And we too are part and parcel of the divine. So personally, I see the hand of divinity in nature every day. So what do you think this actually means? How can we can connect with Krishna every day, but how? Well, he says that I'm the taste of water. So when we take our morning shower, we can say, thank you, Krishna, for the lovely clean water that we have, the warm water. When we drink water, we can say, thank you for providing me with clean water to quench my thirst. When we are cold, Krishna says, do not fear, I'm the heat and fire. That same fire helps to cook our food. But when I read the scripture and I see what human race is doing, it's completely the opposite. So let me break this down for you. Like I said, Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, I'm the taste of water. But the clear water is being polluted with chemicals and plastics, degrading water quality and rendering it toxic to humans and aquatic species. It is said that by 2050, there will be more plastic in the ocean than there is fish. Krishna says, I'm the fragrance of the earth. But in reality, his land is being destroyed through mass deforestation for cattle grazing, or extraction for oil, or minerals, or even reckless fly tipping and litter that we can just see like down the road. Krishna says that I am the life of all that lives. Yet all creatures, great and small, are suffering with habitat loss, mass extinction, and even slaughter. So there seems to be an apparent disconnect between what the scriptures is saying, but what our actions are. So why is that? So we need to understand our dharma. But understanding our duty, our dharma, it is actually one of the most important Vedic concepts. And this has literally been translated into English as duty, virtue, religion. It's said in the Vedas that protecting the environment is actually a very important expression of dharma. Now, I'm going to give you an example. I'm going to take you back. In the past centuries, there's been very traditional communities who never had an understanding of the environment. They did not have an understanding that the environment was like a separate sphere of the activity in their lives. So these rural communities, they used to practice protecting local ecosystems such as forests and water sources. They even refer rivers as goddesses. We even do that ourselves. So these communities carried out these conservation orientated practices not as an environmental act, but rather as an expression of their dharma. So I'm going to take you back to the first tree huggers. And these terminologies is quite, people think, oh, it's a Western terminology, like, oh, you're a right tree hugger. No, it's actually a terminology which has actually come from India. And he actually came from the Bishnoi community. So they're actually a village community who in 1730, they actually died while protecting the trees in their village from being turned into raw material for building a palace. They literally clung to the trees while being slaughtered by the foresters. There was a lady named Amrita Devi, and the village there, they would absolutely revere the Kajali tree. And they found, like I said, they found that the soldiers there, they wanted to just do this vast deforestation to build this palace. So she came running out and she hugged a tree. She said, I'd rather you take my life rather than the life of this tree. That's what happened. They took her life. Then her 3 daughters came running out from their home, and each of them hugged a tree. And sadly, they got slaughtered as well. And what happened was that more and more people from the community started running out, and each of them held a tree, they hugged a tree. That day, 363 people were massacred, they were slaughtered. And when this news came back to the king at that point, so this is in Rajasthan, the whole Chipko movement originated from Rajasthan, this tree hugging movement. And when the king found out what was going on, he was embarrassed and he stopped all chopping down of trees. So this impetus of non-violent protest against deforestation happened there. They were simply expressing their reverence of creation, not restoring the environment. So there's a difference between the Dharma and just caring for the environment. So these traditional Indian groups, they don't see religion or ecology or ethics as a separate arena of their life. Instead, they understood it as being their Dharma, and they needed to treat it with respect. So I personally believe that the house that we live in is actually our second creation. The first creation of our real and most important home is the earth. See, all the conveniences that we have in our home is a direct replication of what is out there. Now, I'm going to give you an example of this. A couple of years ago, I was at a COP26 conference. This is the climate change conference by the United Nations, and it happened in Glasgow. And there was a panel discussion there. And the panel discussion was amongst indigenous peoples from South America, from Latin America. And there was one person, one individual, who was dressed in his very traditional attire. And he was sitting on the panel and he was looking around, like almost bewildered. And when it was for his turn to speak, he still looked quite bewildered. And this was a big conference room. You know, there must have been about I don't know, say 400, 500 people sitting there. And he was on this panel. And he said, looking around, he said, I can feel this cool breeze, but we're not outside. What is this air? And where is it coming from? I can see different lights in this large room, but it's not the same light that I'm aware of, which warms my skin. Where is this light coming from? So it made me think that we are sitting here replicating things which are out there. Yeah. So we're sitting here replicating something which is out there, but that something which is out there, we are destroying the source. I hope you follow me here. Please nod if you follow me. Okay. So that was my little realization that I had just from that moment. So as Vaishnavas, we also see the earth as a personality. You know, we see her as a mother. Now, in the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is another important book in the Vedas, it states that there are actually 7 mothers, and the earth is actually regarded as one of them. So we have the real mother. We have, I don't know, maybe we can open it up here, Sarge. Do you want to open it up? Have a little interaction? Shall we dare to have a little interaction? Can anybody else guess what the other mothers are?
Do we have any guesses for who? So we've got one of the mothers, but we've got 6 more to guess. Do we have any guesses? You can raise your hand or you could type it in the chat. Cow is one of them we've got from
Yeah, that's right.
Vindhyavali. Cow is one, mother cow. Okay. Who else is it? Is it have we said Mother Earth? We said that, haven't you?
Yes, the earth.
Someone said the guru's wife.
Correct.
Okay, any more? No Googling. We've got cow, the guru's wife, Mother Earth. there's personalities like Mother Ganges, but does that count as that counts as Earth, right?
That probably just counts as Earth, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, I'll
I
let you
count
know
that as
then.
half a point.
Yeah, half a point for you.
Okay, would you like to
Okay,
share the
so
others with us?
yeah, I'll share with you those. So we have the real mother. We have the wife of the spiritual master, the guru. We have the wife of a brahmana, or the priest, if you like. The wife of the king. The cow got mentioned. The nurse is a mother. And lastly, like we said, the earth. Okay. So as we know that the mother is a possible is a type of mother, if you like. It got me thinking then, as a child then of the mother, are we protecting the mother, our mother? So right now, Mother Earth is suffering from our actions, our karma. And it's not enough to protect the natural environment. We actually must know its source. So you have quite a few environmentalists out there, some really, really big names who are doing some amazing work out there. But for me to really feel something like a real connection, for there to be real vigor in my work and some real motivation for me to get up every morning and do this work, I have to know its source. So we affectionately call the Mother Earth, the Earth Mother. But where there is a mother, there must be a father, right? So in the Bhagavad Gita, in chapter 14, verse 4, Krishna says, I am the seed-giving father, and nature is the mother of all living beings in all shapes. So we know now that Mother Nature has enough foodstuffs for all of us to be nourished and to be satisfied. And the Father is Sri Krishna. So it is the nature of a mother to be selfless and to give unconditionally. Isn't that right? We recall our own mums. So even though we are there taking, exploiting her and, damaging her, she still gives us so much unconditionally, just like a mother does. So I'd like to labor this point a little bit more. So a disciple of A.C. Bhaktivedanta Srila Prabhupada, who's a founder, teacher of the International Society of Christian Consciousness, he was asked about the connection between God and nature. So one of his disciples, a devotee, asked him, can we worship nature alone? So Srila Prabhupada said to his disciple, now, if I was to leave my spectacles on the chair and I walked away, what would you do? So the disciple said, well, I'd move it from the chair to the table so it doesn't, no one sits on it, it gets broken. But he said, why is it important to you if it gets broken? So Srila Prabhupada asked the devotee, the disciple, to you, why did you move it? The disciple said, because they belong to you and you need work. So with a little bit more probing, the disciple eventually learned that the lesson is that whilst the spectacles are not the guru, but because the spectacles belong to the guru and they are important to him to carry out his work, then they're important to the disciple. Similarly, the earth is the energy of Krishna, and just like those glasses, we want to protect it because we know to whom it belongs. Do you follow? Okay, so therefore the earth is sacred and we should love, protect, show gratitude. And these are all virtues. But when we take more than what we need and we plunder and we rape the land and we over extract, then we're operating with the vices of greed and hankering for more. So what we have failed to see is that what we do to nature will become our nature as well. if we pollute the air, then we do pollute ourselves. So let's explore this a little bit more. So again, in the Vedas, it teaches about the 5 great elements of space, air, fire, water, and earth. These all constitute the environment, and they're all derived from the primal energy, which we call Prakriti. So each of these elements has its own life and form. And together, the elements are interconnected and they're interdependent as well. And another part of the Vedas, the Upanishads, explains that all of these are interdependent. And so we recognize that the human body is composed of and related to these elements, and they connect. Our human body is connected to each of those. Those 5 elements is connected to our 5 senses. So, for example, the human nose is connected to the earth, the tongue to the water, the eyes to fire, the skin to air, and the ears to space. Now, this bond between our senses and the elements is a foundation of our human relationship with the natural world. So the nature and the environment, they're not outside of us, they're not alien to us or hostile to us. They are an inseparable part of our existence, and they constitute our very bodies. So our 5 senses connect us to the earth. So if we stop polluting the rivers and waters, the air, our senses connect to that. So we are then inadvertently polluting ourselves. So that's the kind of issue that we have here, and that's the kind of realization that I've had here as well. I mean, I can go on, but at this point, if there's any questions that you might have, happy to take them. But yeah, I'm happy to carry on. But at this point, I realize that I have been talking for about 25 minutes.
I mean, I was enthralled. I didn't even realize you were talking for 25 minutes. So I'm sure we could all hear a lot more. I think thank you so much for sharing your incredible origins as well, how you were surrounded by the Western Ghats, and how that experience humbled you. And you seeing the hand of divinity in nature every day in that way. It's really, really inspiring, because I think it's very easy. We're so materially orientated and ego driven that we forget. Even myself, I've forgotten the environmental message of the Bhagavad Gita, and how you touched on it so beautifully. How you said religion, ecology, and ethics are intertwined with your duty and our dharma to the environment. It's very easy for us to forget that when we're replicating it synthetically in houses and buildings and
Correct.
whatnot.
Yeah, we forget our source. And actually, you just said something right now, which is made me think of something, which was about how our kind of like vices is creating this kind of like this environmental crisis. And I personally really believe that the environmental crisis is a crisis in the human spirit.
Completely.
Only because I feel like we've replaced our virtues of compassion, gratitude, care, instead with greed, with envy, with impatience. We want things quicker and faster. We can't wait, and maybe that's a world, maybe the way of the world at the moment is technology, and we need things fast. We can't wait. So all of this means that yeah, I guess there's this like real hurriedness, isn't it? We're kind of moving away from the kind of like the simple living, the kind of, this is why I wanted at the beginning, for those that actually tuned in at the beginning, just to take a step back and actually just to kind of internalize. We're always rushing, so yeah, I really believe that also that the pollution that is outside of us actually began from somewhere. It just wasn't just there. The pollution outside of us is actually inside of us. It began. When I talk about the pollution inside of us, I'm talking about those vices that we have, which has then led to the pollution on the outside. So in order for us to tackle the stuff that's happening out there in the environment, we need to take a step back and look at our own lives, have a look in the mirror.
Completely. I really resonate with that. I heard Gaurav Gopal Das say this in a talk on the environment. He said things are meant to be used and people are meant to be loved. That's what they say. But in the world today, things are loved and people are used to get those things, not just people, but trees, animals, water bodies. There's a disconnect between a mature material and spiritual, which is causing a lot of trouble. But
Absolutely.
I think I've got I mean, we could talk all night about this, but I think we're going to open the floor up to some questions. I've got Trisha here, who's a marketing manager for a sustainability organization. So I think she's much better placed to be asking you the questions on this topic. And I'm going to hand the floor over to Trisha. So thank you so much, Sheila.
Thank you.
I don't think we can hear.
Oh, sorry. Schoolboy error. So thank you so much for your thoughts, Sheila. They were really thought-provoking. There's a lot of stuff that you mentioned that, as you said, we're not able to, we don't have the space to think about in our everyday lives. We're busy, we're always in a hurry. And the way we conduct ourselves and the way we lead our lives these days creates a disconnect between us and nature. So I have a few questions for you that I would like to ask you based on what you've just said. You touched upon the topic of inclusivity at the start when you were referring to how your protective nature grew. Um, it seemed like through your spiritual practice and organically this is an idea that you developed. How can the rest of us cultivate this intentionally, this sense of inclusivity to increase from just ourselves and our family to include the whole earth?
So this is the reason why I carried out that little exercise at the beginning, for you to think of your happy place when you're actually outside somewhere. And normally these happy places, they tend not to be in built up areas, you know. They tend to be somewhere out in nature, you know. So for me personally, what helped me build my relationship with the natural world was something just simple, something simple, which, you know, what's helped me feel good. You know, rarely do I feel good just sitting at home, you know. And we realize this, you know, going back to the kind of like COVID times. You know, remember those days when we had like 1 hour where we could like walk outside? You know, people didn't go walking out amongst like buildings. They went out to parks, didn't they? They went out to green, open landscapes because that's where they felt their joy. That's where they felt their connection. So this is why I did that little exercise at the beginning where I asked you to close your eyes, to take a deep breath in and connect to a place where you felt happy. And like I said, 10 at least like 9 times out of 10 it is going to be somewhere like in your local park or by a beach, or for me it was like a mountaintop. And it doesn't even have to be somewhere, you know, you catch a plane somewhere. It can just be just it can be your garden. It can even be like your this beautiful cherry tree in your local park. It could just be anything like that. So for me, I really felt inclined to really go and deep dive into where I felt joyful, and those places where I felt joyful was out in nature. So for everybody else, really, I kind of urge you to all take a walk by yourself in a park. Don't put your headphones in. Don't even have your phone on you, or just keep it in your pocket, in your bag, whatever. But just take a look around. I did that this afternoon actually. I did a little lunchtime walk to my local park just to clear my head, and I did this exercise where it's called like a mindful walk as well, but it's also kind of connecting to nature. And I did this walk where I thought of like 5 things that I can like see, 5 things that I can hear, 5 things that I can like touch. And this was all in the park. And it got me listening to the bird song, got me listening to the bark of a dog which was far away. And it got me connected to the place I am. So not only is it good for your mental health, but also it's a good exercise to connect to nature as well. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, definitely. I think from what I'm understanding, some of what you're referring to is grounding. Like when you can focus on nature, it's very grounding and focusing on the elements that would slip by if you didn't intentionally make an effort to become aware of them. Um, the other question I had was, um, why do you think it is that our greed is so big at the moment as a society that, in spite of being intellectually quite aware that the earth is the food we eat and the water we drink and the air that we breathe, why is it that we put these thoughts to the side and continue acting as if that's not the case, or as if our actions don't have a detrimental impact on the environment?
The simple answer is sense gratification. We want to gratify our own senses. That's really what it is. And I'm finding, and the reason why earlier I said I spoke about the environmental crisis is a one of the human spirit, is because we're reaching out for things which are temporary, and we're reaching out for, we're filling a void in our lives with things that we don't actually need. And all these things are all temporary things. And I really believe that we can satisfy our every need without compromising the environment. But unfortunately, we're doing the opposite at the moment. Um, I mean, in kind of like everyday terms, you see, our actions does have a detrimental effect on the environment, and sometimes we don't see it like firsthand. You know, it could be that the impact could be felt somewhere else. You know, like the pollution. Normally, you know, the pollution that is created, I guess, in the Western countries is kind of felt elsewhere. You know, like for example, the communities are living off the Pacific Islands. You know, their communities and land is just underground, sort of under the water right now. You know, and we don't feel, and that's the reason why that we don't do anything urgent. The reason why is because we're not feeling it here and now. You know, okay, fine, we get crazy like hot weather, but we all love it. Actually, this is climate change. If it carries on like that, there's nothing to love about it. It's going to become really uncomfortable. So that's the issue. The issue is that we are not feeling the I guess the effects of our actions in this country straight away. But just know that these actions are being felt in other countries, and other communities are suffering because of it. So we have to open our eyes a little bit more, and we have to become a little bit more aware of our actions as well.
Yeah, thank you. Um, you talk about countries. In some ways, it's easy to perceive that the UK or Europe is quite ahead when it comes to being environmentally conscious, when it comes to regulation, things like that, becoming carbon neutral, and hence may want to put the responsibility onto the other countries that don't necessarily have the ability to be as progressive when it comes to the environment. Um, what would you say to that when it comes to countries that have the opportunity to lead the way, and how can they take more responsibility and do better in that sense that you're referring to? And this actually ties in with a question we've got from Bharti in the audience, asking what should and what can be done to bring back the earth to what it was earlier from what it has become.
Yeah, I mean, these are really big questions, which is why we have the Conference of Parties, United Nations Conference of Parties. These are really big questions, and like it's unfortunate that the way it is at the moment, you know, the global kind of north are creating the problems, and yet the global south are suffering or feeling the impact of it. I really believe that, you know, going to the climate change conference, that we can't rely on the government to actually make these changes. They're not, you know, COP. I think we're on what, like COP 28 now or something, and that basically means 28 years. You know, we've been having these like conferences for the last like 28 odd years. Or 29 years. That's basically what that means. So these governments, you know, these government heads are coming again and again every year to talk about the same thing. Yes, we've made a little bit of progress, but not enough, you know, not enough. And I really believe that when I did go to that climate change conference, I saw the power in the people. I didn't see the power in the government. I saw the power in the people. I saw the power from the grassroots groups there, I guess. As that's where I saw the change from happening. So rather than the change happening from up down, the change can happen from the bottom up. So
Yeah.
I really believe that is really where. So in terms of the other question that we had was from Bartila in terms of what can we do. You know, there's actually the definition of sustainability. Again, the definition of sustainability, the Western folk thought they created it. Yes, every individual and Krishna. Yes, thank you. So yeah, so I realized that the definition of sustainability that we see right now comes from like the Western country, if you like. You know, where I remember when I was at university, you know, it was in the textbook that I read. But it's only when I started going deeper, you know, into my own faith. My word, the terminology of sustainability is actually in our Vedas, right? So it's actually in the Vedas, it's actually in the Vedic scriptures called the Sri Ishopanishad. And I'm going to read that a little bit out to you. And if we can all do this, we're on our way. And it says in the Sri Ishopanishad, it says that every animate or inanimate, everything animate or inanimate that is within the universe is controlled and owned by the Lord. One should therefore accept only those things necessary for himself, which are set aside as his quota. One should not accept other things, knowing well to whom they belong. So basically it means take only what you need, do not take anything more, for you know to whom it belongs. And so we have that definition of sustainable living right here. It's not a modern concept. It's actually in our Vedas. When I learned about that, honestly, I laughed out loud. I was just like, my word, you know, I'm not saying like my studies were nonsense, but you know, you know, the kind of empirical studies that we have at university. But it made me think, my God, you know, it's always been there. You know, it's not a modern concept at all. So I guess my point is that we can advance and be progressive as nations without compromising the natural world, and we can learn to live in harmony with the natural world as well.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. When we talk about our relationship with the natural world, there is always a sense of separation. There's us and the natural world, it's outside of us. Um, However, when you look at it on a grander scale, it almost appears as if we are a cell in the body of the earth. And there is a lot of similarity between the system that is us and the systems that are greater than us in the universe. And as we zoom out and a human being becomes much, much smaller than a speck of dust, it does really feel like it's not just outside of us, we are a part of the earth. It's our tunnel vision that makes us feel like we are outside of the earth. Do you have any thoughts when it comes to what the Gita says about that? Um, about not only the relationship as a mother or as the giver, um, but how we are, as I mentioned, a cell in the body of the earth.
That's just beautiful. I'm going to write that down. That is actually just really nicely put. So you said, just repeat that again. We are the cell
A cell
of
in
the
the
body.
body of the earth.
Cell. So yeah, I think everyone who's got pen or paper, you should write that down. We are the cell in the body of the earth. Now, the way you've put it, I mean, you tell me, how does that make you feel? I mean, if we want to open it up to the audience here, just what's been said right now by Trisha, I'd like to hear your thoughts. What does that, how do you feel about that? What does that make you feel? What does that make you feel you want to do? You can unmute yourself and yeah, let's just talk about it. I love
Would
that.
anybody like to share that experience or that the idea being a cell in the body of the earth? How does that make you feel? Or how has anything that Sheila's been kind enough to share with us and Trisha's been kind enough to ask resonate with you? You don't have to turn your mic on, and you can unmute yourself if you don't want to come on screen. Or you can type it in the chat.
I mean, maybe Trisha, you can explain.
It
what
looks
that
like
could...
it looks like it's up to me or Trisha to explain how it makes it feel. I think
You first, Raj.
last week I think somebody spoke at the in-person event in Covent Garden about how if you take a droplet of the ocean, and we're comparable to that droplet. We're part of this vast causal, material, and spiritual ocean of beings and existence. Yet that single droplet contains all the elements of that ocean itself, and it's like the experience that you had with the mountains and the Western Ghats, like on your own. You can be incredibly humbled by nature, and you realize that you're that small part and parcel of this entire creation and this entire existence. And I think carrying that forward and that attitude forward when you're out on a day-to-day basis and out in nature, remembering that you're part and parcel of that, and those words that you shared with chapter 4 with when Krishna says that he is the water and the the fire and the heat. It enables us to remember the place that we have and not to just lord ourselves over material nature and just fill that quota that's necessary and not overreach.
Exactly. But thank you for saying that, Trisha. That's really beautifully put.
No, thank you. Thank you so much. We are at time now, so Saj, if you'd like to come back and take over from us.
Thank
you
you
so much for answering my questions,
Oh,
Sheila.
actually, sorry, there was just one other thing. I think there was something on the chat, if I don't mind.
No, of course.
Somebody, I think, just asked Oh, that was actually you, Sarge.
Oh, that
Are
was
there any
me. Yeah.
group?
What are there any? Because
Yeah.
I was part of we tried to set up an environmental group a year or two ago called the Vanamali Project with a guy called a devotee called Vrindapati. I think you don't know if you know
Mm.
him. Nick. But anyway, the idea we had was let's create content, let's raise awareness, and we put all this responsibility on ourselves. And we realized that then you have to be consistent with creating content, and it's sometimes easier to plug into an initiative or an organization that's already got a bit of traction or a bit of, clout per se, or is already making a difference or has gone through those steps that you could potentially plug into. And I know you have your own initiatives that have been UNESCO recognized. So anything that you'd recommend?
Yeah, so I'm really glad you brought that up actually, because I wanted to mention this anyway, but this is giving me a segue, a perfect segue
There you go.
to plug something.
Yeah.
So I'm actually a part of a group called the Eco Bhakti group,
Eco
and
Bhakti.
we've been Eco Bhakti. So you just go online and just tap in ecobhakti.org. I'm not sure whether they've got a website right now, but if you just tap in that, I think we might have something. But you can just contact myself or maybe the Think Gita, and I can kind of mention something a little bit about this. But I think it's like a mailing list that we have at the moment. But you can join us. There's actually the Eco Bhakti group meets like every month. Actually, it's happening today, right now. But I've
Oh,
had to
great.
come on here.
So
So
that's
so
one
we're
we can
like,
look into.
yeah, you can definitely look into that. We're just like-minded people that
Fantastic.
come together, and we yeah, formulate
So
like initiatives.
So have a look at that. You can Google it, Eco Bhakti, and follow the trail. But I'm just conscious of time because we've just run over. So thank you so much, Sheila, for sharing your insights with us today and
Yeah.
taking time out. I really appreciate it. Jay, I think you've put your hand up, so maybe you can pop something in the chat if you wanted to. But I'd just like to remind everyone that we've got in-person events at the end of each month. The next one is on the 26th of October in Covent Garden. There's more wisdom talks happening online. I think we have SP Keshav Swami, who's going to be joining us on the 19th of October, which is really, really exciting. So please follow us on Instagram, Think Gita, stay tuned with the wisdom talks, and we'd love to meet and see some of you in person at the monthly meetups. Next one's 26th of October in Covent Garden. So thank you so much again, Sheila. Hopefully we can meet you in person at the at one of the Covent Garden events, and I'll definitely be looking up Eco Bhakti this evening.
Yes, yeah, please do. We do meet online. Somebody just asked a question. We meet online.
Okay, perfect. Okay,
Yeah.
there we go. Thank you everyone for joining. Hare Krishna, and we'll see you on the next one.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you, Sheila.
Okay, thanks. Bye.
Bye.